Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Belgian Football Podcast. My name's Scott Coyne. I'll be your host for this week's episode, and joining me to review the week in Belgian football is our very own Mr. Joris Beck. How are you, Joris?
Topsy-turvy like the week in Belgian football has been, I guess, as well. No, actually, I'm fine, but the week actually in Belgian football really has been, quite topsy-turvy. And quite a few things happened. Of course, we're covering almost 2 match days now in one, and recording a bit later in the week because of that. So, dear listeners, if you were missing us, it had a reason. There were just too many games and things unfolding because of that in the meantime. So we decided to take a little bit more time to come back.
Yeah, sometimes good to build the tension and delay that a little bit longer, not just when we've got heavy fixtures kind of piling upon us. Yeah, quite a lot has happened, hasn't it, Joris, since we last convened? Union, obviously, the big game of last weekend now, Club Brugge went to Brussels to play Union and lost by 2-1, and Union opened up a 4-point lead, which some people got very, very excited about. Some people said, whoa, calm your jets, nothing's done yet. It's not over till the fat lady sings, as some people say. And then, of course, we've had games over the last 24 hours, and it's all changed again. Union failing to beat Ghent at home, drawing 0-0, and Club smashing Mechelen 6-1, which means the deficit that was 4 after last weekend is now only 2, so it's very much still on again. And I think that's probably where we should start this week, Joris, where we're at with the title race, because I think a lot of people thought after last weekend, well, there's a good chance it's mostly over. There's some interesting stuff doing the rounds on Belgian media, which I'm sure you saw as well, where there was, I think it was Sporza, had put out a poll asking people whether they felt that it was over or not after Union's win last weekend. And I think something like, 75% of the people who voted said they thought it was probably done, which was a bit premature, really, in light of what happened, only 24 hours or so ago.
Please don't vote on those polls, people, because ironically, Sporza, the same medium, has actually now posted the poll, like, who is the title favorite. And it will go on like this until it's decided. So they could do this kind of poll literally every 3 days or every week, depending on how much time there is in between games. That's one of the things I've you hit a pet peeve of me there, just on the nail. I wasn't going to mention it, but since you brought it up, that's just and just in general, I still don't get how 70% of people voted for that. By the way, I have to admit it feels likely, but like I said last week, and I did fall for it last week, so I do get it in a sense, but still I had that caveat. Everything is possible still until it's not possible anymore. In playoffs, we've seen it every damn year lately, so I don't get people thinking it's over after 3 game days. That's my first summary of it all.
I think people have very short memories, don't they? They don't have much of a big picture. It's usually coaches, T1s, when they come out, are the first to remind us there's a lot of football to be played yet. And to be fair to Ivan Leko, that's pretty much what he said in the aftermath of that defeat last weekend. He went, look, it's not great, but there's still plenty of football to be played. And they did, they did respond to that defeat resoundingly last night, that's for sure. And then there was some very weird behaviour from Ivan Leko in his post-match press conference last night, which some people seem to think was because of the way that the press treated Club after that defeat as well. There was a lot of people, kind of getting very excited about that 4-point gap opening up, and I think he felt it was a little bit disrespectful. So he was avoiding a lot of questions and being quite obstructive with the media last night after that game, which in a way I can understand. But then this is a coach who is under a bit of pressure at the moment as well. He's doing the chasing, and he knows fine well, of course, that if he doesn't deliver the goods, then he's almost certainly not going to be there at the start of next season as well. So, we're getting down to the real brass tacks of this now. Not many games left to go, so it's all about holding your nerve at this stage. I was having a look at some stats actually earlier on, Joris, and the thing is, you can argue about who might be favourites, and of course it's still all up for grabs. Union, they've kind of nailed how to play playoff football. I think they've gone, is it 20 playoff games now, unbeaten in a row, which is really something. I mean, even Club's best record, I think, was 15 in a row. And Standard have put together, and we have to go back quite a while for this now, but Standard have put together 2 runs of 10 matches in playoff 1 without defeat. So Union have really become kind of playoff monsters in a good way in terms of kind of getting the job done. So I think when you look at the stats, they're probably still the favourites.
I would say so as well, but I'm very hesitant. I really would still put it at 51% or something, because they already had a lot of home games as well. And away from home, they have struggled in the regular season to win any kind of game anyway. And of course, now they still have that away game against Club Brugge. They might... Okay, I don't think it's happening, because I do feel like especially Club Brugge might drop some more points. They're not consistent enough even in the playoffs. So they won't win all of the next games, but at least if they keep up the same track record as Union, whether that is with or without any defeats or rather draws or anything, if Union just lose that one game, in that case, then Club Brugge are champion regardless of everything. So just one loss could actually defeat, harm them. Of course, ironically, it was of course also Gent were the only side that had taken any point, so literally 1 point in the regular season as well. And now they've done the same in the playoffs at the Dudenpark. I mean, so at Union's home ground. I mean, they are still ahead. They already won game against Lübeck gone as well. So there's many ways to look at this. Of course, mentally, it has shifted again. I guess it's shifted indeed both ways. The pendulum has swung both ways in the last 5 days or so. But yeah, that's 4 days even, I guess. But yeah, anyway, that's really that could happen more as well. Now the pressure is of course coming. Many of those Union players are still many of them are the core that has played some more playoff games already. Some others haven't, though, as well, as we know they had some shuffles in their squad. So from some of those players, we don't know yet if they can handle the pressure. So far, they've done all right, but I still feel a bit as well that they are really struggling. The main worry for them is scoring goals. They have obviously won the first 3 playoff games, all but 1 game goal difference, without conceding much. So that's still a plus, and that remains the same. Gent had some opportunities, but regardless of that, I mean, you can't keep everything out for 10 games straight. That's clear. And they did come back from behind in that win against Club Brugge as well, of course. So that there's a little show of some mental strength, of course, but can they keep that up for the remainder of those games? I do feel like their scouting is aimed at that mentality, but yeah, and it has generally really shown really well throughout their seasons as well. There's many factors at play. Another one is, of course, I feel like at Union, there still might be less pressure, even though, of course, they are the reigning title holders and are ahead and have been ahead most of the season now as well. I feel like there's less pressure on them to get that title. If they lose that title, it's less bad for them than if Club Brugge don't win their title. Let's put it that way, maybe. So in that sense, there might indeed be more pressure on Club Brugge as well, of course, having spent quite some money, of course, also getting it. I mean, not outspent their budget, but still some things not gelling, and injuries playing a role as well, damaging them a bit. Both sides, actually, of course. We'll have to wait and see, as I generally say a lot in this podcast, but. yeah, I wouldn't put any money on it. But since they are still ahead, and it's always better to be ahead than to be chased, even though it might feel differently at times in the playoffs. Then I'd still feel I give Union indeed the edge a little bit, but it's still way too early to say. That's I'll stick with what I said at the beginning. I guess like I indeed don't get like yes now okay it's shifted, but it might shift again next week again. Playoffs are, even if it looks like there's two sides running away from the others, it doesn't mean they're going to win all games against the other sides, and then there might be some surprise results like Gens one, I guess as well. So yeah, but given they still have a little bonus and actually are having a bigger bonus than they had last week before those two games as well. Yeah, I mean, Union are still favorites to me, but yeah, I mean, I'm almost at a 50-50 level at this stage, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually. You know, you were using the phrase there, the pendulum swings. I think that sums it up kind of really nicely. It is difficult to read too much into things at the moment, and particularly being the Belgian league, I think that's particularly true as well. I mean, looking at the way the fixtures are falling, and you kind of alluded to this as well. Union have only got 2 home games left. Club have 3, of course, including one against Union, which could, because that's the third last fixture for both as well, could still be very, very important. Club have got Ghent away, Anderlecht away, St Truden at home, Union at home, Mechelen away, and Ghent at home, and Union have got Anderlecht away, St Truden away, Mechelen at home, Club away, Ghent away, and Anderlecht at home, and also they've got the cup final in the middle of that run as well. We haven't
right before that mutual fixture, the second leg of this Club Union of the IFL. So of course, they especially will need to be mentally strong one way or another, win or lose that cup final. Stay strong for the league, stay focused for the league as well. Presuming nothing has been drastically changed, both in a positive or in a negative way for them by then in the league as well, of course. But it's not that far out anymore. So yeah, all to play for anyway. I guess. I do think I don't know how many games are in between now, but I'm sure that if they would win in Bruges, of course, that then they still will be in a shout or a hit, or if they win that game, then they really will still be in it, regardless of if they might have dropped some more points. Maybe they already becoming champion then might be a bit early, but might be almost over the line by then. But anyway, just they will still be in it by that fixture. That's basically what I'm saying. And that these another 4 important days for Union, win or lose that cup final, and win or lose. Well, there could be a draw, of course, as well. Win, draw, or lose in Bruges in the return fixture of last weekend's game.
I think that's one of those interesting things as well, because nobody has really spoken too much about how the cup final might play into this. I mean, you want to be in that position. You want to be in the position of potentially being able to go and win the double. I mean, it's a great position to be in. But you've also got that thing as well, because in a lot of countries, the National Cup final tends to come at the end of the domestic season as well, and it's a standalone thing. And the fact that it isn't, the fact that it's happening right at the culmination point of the playoffs, does mean it's going to play into this somehow, you would imagine, because like you say, all it takes is, a bad reaction to what happens there, maybe another bad injury to somebody, anything, these things kind of pivot on kind of quite small things. So while it's great to be going at 2 fronts like that, at the same time, part of you looks at that, and I think, you would really love the cup final, wouldn't you, to be kind of a standalone game after the domestic season's kind of done and dusted, really. But they've proven they can cope in several fronts, Union. So I don't think internally inside the camp they'll be too concerned about that. It's just an interesting kind of nuance in all of this. Speaking of nuance, Playoff 2, the European playoff, is getting a bit more interesting as well. Obviously, Genk dropping some more points. Westerlo, looked to be in a good position last time we sat down to chat, then dropped some points of their own and are now back in a good position. And it is still pretty much a kind of two-horse race, really, I think, between your side, Genk, and Westerlo. I'm ruling Standard out and have done for a while ago, even though mathematically they're still very much in the mix. The fact, and I'm going to say, here we go again, another week, they still can't win back-to-back games. That alone tells me that, the chances of them going on to win this playoff are very, very small. How do you feel about the way this one's going to land now we're another week on?
Yet I won't rule Standard out because the next game is Genk Standard, and if they win that, they're next to Genk again as well. And so far, Genk, it has been a struggle for Genk all season to win any home games at all, and especially in the whole playoff, in this whole Europe playoffs, there's been barely any home wins so far across all sides as well. So they gained 0 points. Still, the points tally against Standard are still at 0 points, standing at 0 points. So of course, Westerlo could be the ones running away with that and taking advantage of that. They still could be 3 points ahead of Standard, and again, leapfrogging Genk. Similar thing happened with Genk and Westerlo, similar to, and less dramatic, of course, since it's not the complete top of the league, but between Club Brugge and Union. Genk winning the last weekend against Westerlo, the away game, putting themselves in a good position, and then failing to win against the depleted Charleroi squad. They really should have won that game. That they had enough chances to do so, but it didn't happen so many times this season. And I still remain very, even though currently they are top of that playoff, of course, albeit just on the league ranking, so from the narrowest of leads. But I don't believe in this Genk squad to be honest to get anything out of this season. Although I was pleasantly surprised that they actually won that game against Westerlo, though. So last week, I guess it was specifically on this topic that I was saying more, was looking more in my glass ball, looking into the future and ruling Genk out. I'm not going to completely rule them out, but I still don't believe in it, regardless of that. But yes. I feel like it might actually become a race between Westerlo and Standard, because Westerlo also are not the most consistent side in the end, or because of that, it could still be indeed that Genk would run away with it, not as cleanly as everyone that's outside of Genk would have thought maybe, but given the internal struggles and the huge amount of rotation and some weird choices sometimes as well, tactically, and in the man management, there are some signs that the Genk squad is that Genk squad. There's still something not completely right there, but okay, everything goes with results, of course. And so far, they have not been too terrible. Of course, we still no losses, of course, as well in those playoffs, and still in the lead, albeit like I said, in the closest possible way so far. But We'll have to wait and see also here, but I do still feel like it's a 3-horse race, at least until next, then after the next weekend. But I do believe it still might run further anyway, as well. Since none of those sides are consistent. That's your take is Standard are consistent, and my take is none of them are, I guess. Which, okay, Standard, of course, have to come back from behind, so puts them in a worse position than the other two sides. That of course, is obvious, but I'm not completely ruling them out yet, also because of the fixture list still.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear Nicky Hyan this week bemoaning yet again the lack of efficiency, perhaps, the Genk have been suffering from for what feels like the whole season, really, to be honest. Plenty of chances to kind of kill games and just not being able to do it. I mean, I think when I was looking at this the other day, I think a lot of people have to bear in mind there's a lot of young players in this squad still. That's absolutely not an excuse, but I think sometimes it does explain inconsistency. And obviously there's going to be, as we alluded to, I think last week and the week before, probably quite a lot of change inside your club over the summer, both on and off the pitch potentially. You know, when you get to this stage of the season as well, and, you know, young players, you know, a long, hard season, inconsistency tends to plague you more than it would do at any other point as well. So it's kind of looking like this one's going to go to the wire, which we thought it might. I remember us saying that, you know, playoff 2 might be by far the most interesting one this year, which is not something we can often say, and it's definitely looking like that at the moment. So we do have, for the first time in ages, Joris, we do have some listeners' questions this week, which we're going to tackle because we said we would tackle them all, and we've actually got 3. The first one comes from Gordon Wright, who I think is a regular listener. Hello, Gordon, if you're listening. Thanks for your question. Gordon has got a question for us on somebody that everybody will know quite a lot about already. It's a Hans van Aken related question, and Gordon asks Joris, why is Hans van Aken so underrated? The first thing I want to throw at this, is Hans van Aken underrated?
Yeah, that's the only thing I'm going to say. He isn't. That's my answer.
Certainly not in Belgium. He's not underrated in Belgium because we should, for those of you who don't know...
Okay, wait. I'm going to correct my answer. He isn't anymore. I do believe there was a time that only club fans were rating him highly, but I do believe that time is like past 5 years ago or so already, at least a few years ago by now.
Yeah, he's 3 times Belgian Golden Shoe winner. 2018, 2019 and 2024, which makes him 3 times winner, level with Jan Sulemans and Wilfred van Moer, and only 1 behind a certain Paul van Himst. Nobody's won more than him. Nobody's likely to win more than him, I don't think. He won 4. That tells you kind of what the Belgian football makes of him. You know, he is... Hans van Aken's a legend, do you know what I mean, in Belgian football. He just is. He is already, of course. 558 Club Brugge appearances now, I think, 150 goals. Now, when I was thinking about this yesterday when Gordon's question came in, he's obviously not underrated in Belgium anymore. You know, that recognition is there. I'm not so sure he's underrated in the rest of Europe either, if I'm really honest, because he has had opportunities to move. You know, he's turned down a few opportunities to go to England. I think the most recent was, was it 3 years ago now, that potential move to West Ham for something in the region of 12 to 15 million that didn't go through. He's just happy at home in Belgium, and I've got to say, I've said this about him before. I take my hat off to him in that sense. You know, good players are often encouraged, particularly by their agents. You know, go and try a new project, a new adventure before it's too late. You know what I mean? Go and, you know, take the pay rise. You know what I mean? Push yourself, all of that sort of stuff, and it just doesn't appeal to Hans. I don't think he's happy where he is, and you know, that so rarely happens, I think. He does have his admirers, though. I mean, Pep Guardiola is a big admirer of him. He's spoken publicly about how he likes him a lot, and how he felt he could fit into Manchester City's side, actually, which is quite interesting. But the other thing about him, and I made a note of this, was football nowadays is, you know, it's flashy players who people tend to talk about. People who score a lot of goals, who might have a lot of silky skills, who get bums off seats and who kind of make things happen. Hans van Aken makes things happen in an old-fashioned, non-showy sense. That's how I would describe it. He's quite old-fashioned in that sense. You know, he's a progressive ball carrier. He's great in tight spaces. You know, he's a great passer of the ball all over the place. He's consistent. He's got an extremely good injury record. He's very, very rarely injured, although funnily enough, recently he's missed, you know, some tiny moments here or there, kind of ironically. He's just incredibly fit and consistent. And Yeah, there's something quite old-fashioned about him, and he doesn't seem to have that big an ego, and there's just something really, really Belgian about Hans van Aken. I think that's the only way I can describe it. He's kind of self-deprecating, he's quiet, he punches well above his weight. Is much better than a lot of people kind of give him credit for. He quietly goes about his business and is very, very effective about it. Yeah, he's in many ways the ultimate Belgian footballer. I suppose that's maybe the biggest compliment I can kind of give him. So he's not. I don't think he's undervalued, and I don't think he's underrated. And I think it's great that he's still here, to be honest, because when we last talked about him in great depth, which was maybe last season at some point, we've been quite critical about Hans in the past because we know he's good. But he's still producing at this level, and even at Champions League level, he's still producing the goods as well. I think, was it this season or last season, he had the most touches in midfield of any player in the Champions League as well, which is an incredible stat if you think about it, for a player that, maybe only the Belgian media and us talk about a lot. It's incredible, really.
Yeah, okay. The one thing that I also, why I would see where this question maybe is coming from is like he's a bit unlucky in the timing when he is shining, in the sense of how good the national team squad is, to look at that way as well. That maybe there were like, he's a bit unlucky. There were this golden generation, although I hate to coin that term, but okay, that really good generation. Anyway, that with careers outside as well, with De Bruyne, who's, I mean, even the biggest Hans van Aken fan has to admit, maybe now, we're not talking about current levels, but in the career high levels, at least, he still was a step above that, of course. And others, of course, like the Fellaini's, the Dembeles, even Tielemans, maybe as well. That's really are having maybe at least international careers, so they take a bit of the light off him in at least at the national squad. And now he's featuring more and more, though later on. Now more of this generation is indeed are either already retired or dropping their levels, and like he's not, he's really conserving his level. Okay, maybe in a sense he's dropping some things of his game, but he's also finding new things in it as well at the same time, which happens with players when they start to age a little bit, with all respect, of course. They go a bit lower, or they just make smarter decisions, and maybe even, and that means, like, for example, this season he's not scoring as much. Like his goals and assists are a bit down in comparison to other years, at least in the league. But you can clearly see that it's still so important for Club Brugge, of course, and like him not being there, or not being fully fit is one other reason. This is one of the injuries, of course, I was talking about at Club Brugge already, as well, like not being fully fit and only featuring a little bit in the game against Union this weekend. It harms them. This specifically, this injury, if it stays longer, could really harm them, and cost them a title, even since there are such narrow gaps. That's, of course, specifically focusing on a vacuum. I know Union also, especially with David out, also has their injuries, but and kind of has a similar status, I guess. Not position, obviously, but status in his squad. And like, we'll have to see. One of them will probably end up being champion regardless, anyway. But nonetheless, I think both sides could make a case that one of those injuries might have harmed them in the end. Of course, we'll have to see how things develop. But okay, that's a bit off topic on this topic. But just in general, like, I don't feel like Van Aken is underrated. But like, I can see where the question is coming from, in the sense of where he's standing in broader international Belgian football light. Let's say, put it that way. Red Devil light, maybe, as well. But in general, I do feel like even that has changed, and he's also getting more and more chances there, and generally taking them as well. Not always, but that's normal. That's the whole squad is indeed a bit less now as well, of course. And then that's maybe a big summary again as well, and a big compliment, I guess, as well, generally anyway.
He did get a goal last night as well against Mechelen in that route that club had.
But who didn't?
Well, that's true. Yeah. You were beginning to wonder who wasn't going to. Yeah, it was not a good night for Malima last night. That's for sure. I left that rant in another room elsewhere, maybe to be picked up at another point, depending what happens in pre-season. He got his goal last night, and it's interesting you touching upon kind of his international career, and it been kind of an unfortunate timing for him. I think the fact that he's now becoming a more regular member of the squad again in a way that he wasn't before is quite interesting, because to me that says something about Rudy Garcia kind of really wanting that experience in that squad, alongside some of the members of that very good generation who are still with us and perhaps still have one decent tournament left in them. We'll find out very shortly. But yeah, I mean, anyone else you can throw in there that's got really strong top level experience consistently, particularly at Champions League level as well, can add something, and Hans Van Aken can do that, and be an arm to throw around some of the younger players in there, and to kind of help guide them as well, and even if he doesn't necessarily start games for the national team, has got a good 20 minutes, 30 minutes in him, able to kind of really contribute something at a high level still as well. The other question we had this week, Joris, was actually it's a slightly cheeky question because it was a two-part question, and we're going to be really generous and we're going to answer both of them. Phil, who I think is also a regular listener, hello to you, Phil, if you're listening. So Phil asks us, Joris, one, do we think the main issue with the playoff system is the halving of points, and that abolishing this is the best way forward, which I have a lot of sympathy with, and I've kind of come round to that school of thought over the last 4 or 5 years, shall we say. And the second part of the question is really more about the kind of, is the CPL viable in the new format, or will we see more under-23s? Where do you want to start with this one? Because this is quite a big question.
I've changed my mind on almost 360. Well, no, 180 degrees. I guess on one of those topics. But it isn't the first one. I do feel for the playoffs. I mean, I'm a fan. Anyway, as regular listeners will know, I am a fan of the playoffs. And that this is a playoffs in more or less their current form, the amount of teams in it, that's maybe the one point I'm still open to discuss. And okay, we'll discuss, but like that's the one thing that's a bit open for me, whether that's 4 or 6 sides. With the halving of the points included though, because otherwise I would rather have a regular league like we'll have next season. As it stands, we'll have to see, I guess. But I think next season should be cemented now, I think. But how long it will stand like that is another topic. But and also, you can never say cemented in April in this case in Belgium. But assuming that's the case, I mean, either that, which I'm less in favor for, but I still find that a better solution than the playoffs without the halving of the points, because it takes away the purpose of the playoffs to me. Okay, of course, it still could be in some seasons the differences still will be really small, of course. But I'm sure I'm not. This is my own opinion, of course. I'm not. I mean, I'm quite certain I'm in the minority of people that have this opinion. But if there are playoffs, then I would keep the halving of the points, because it keeps them interesting, and that's the point of those playoffs. If there is no halving of the points, it might be. Well, Ben made a remark when we were discussing this earlier in the WhatsApp group as well. Like, you might have situations similar, not exactly, of course, but similar to what now happened with the relegation playoffs, At least for the title. Maybe there will most likely be some tension and some pressure still on for some sides in it, where everything is packed a bit closer to each other. But for the main thing, in some seasons it might not be as interesting, and that's ultimately what gathers the interest, of course, and is the goal of those playoffs. So for me personally, it's either the playoffs with the halving or without, or just no playoffs at all, which I mean is my least favorite, not my favorite idea, but still for me still better than the how I call it, I guess the halfway solution, something like that, the middle ground solution. There, I'm not certain about that, but we might be able to see that. I believe in Austria they're doing that next season, so we can see how it's going there. And also in Scotland, I don't know exactly, but it's still different. There's also a different system, but I don't know if it's still with halving. But it's only one. The teams are only playing each other once anymore, and that's also weird. But okay, that's another topic. The Scottish system also always has had some peculiarities, not unlike the Belgian one's system, but well, still a bit less convoluted, maybe, but still, yeah.
So our Joris is definitely in favour of maintaining the jeopardy. That's what he's saying. I've actually had, a bit like Joris in the way I've had a complete kind of change of heart on this, or a most of a change of heart. I for a long time was never a fan of the playoffs or the halving of points, although I understood kind of the theory behind that. I never really subscribed to the theory for a long time, but the more I've watched and the more I've seen, and the more embedded I've become in Belgian football culture, the more I've kind of moved away from that and come to understand that actually I think my initial position was probably wrong. And through experience, I've learned that I still am not massively keen on the playoffs. I think I could live with the playoffs if the points halving was to go. That's the interesting thing. And I suppose it's never really been explored. So we're going to find out in a way, because as of now, unless things change, and because it's Belgium, they could still change yet. They could changes week to week, of course, as all of you will know. We've been caught out with this before as well. We know at the moment that next season we're going to be going to kind of a classic format, supposedly. As of tonight, anyway, that's what's going to be happening. So we will get to see how this goes. I would be quite keen to see how the playoffs would work without the points halving. I think Ben's right. The danger with that is the championship could be won within 2 or 3 weeks into the playoffs, and effectively you've got 6 or 7 completely dead games with no jeopardy whatsoever. So this is obviously where Joris is coming from as well. I kind of get that. I think the feeling inside clubs, Joris, that I get is that the opinion is kind of split on this, really. I think I'm sure they're talking about it privately behind the scenes, and have been for kind of a long time, because they're probably going to be voting in this sooner than we all think again.
That is another topic I want to raise, maybe concerning this. Why are the clubs even involved in this process? Isn't there like an external study bureau or anything? Okay, I know there have been studies and all, but I mean, the clubs are always fighting for their own interest. It's logical as well. I mean, you can condemn it for sure, especially some clubs last season. Yes, Henk, I'm indeed looking at you. Not only Henk, but definitely one of the main culprits there have been swinging their opinions based on some other things they got in return for that. This whole they are always bargaining, and especially since the voting system anyway is not equal, so it's not a democratic voting system anyway as well. I mean, I do still feel like this should be an external party, or maybe the FA rather than the clubs. Okay, and then within the FA, there's always going to be lobbying, that's for sure. That's always going to be the case. But regardless of that, I do feel like that there is an easier, a fairer way to decide this, because now I mean, we see the same system every year or so. Like, of course, like when they vote for the format, they all like it. They're all in favor. But and next season, the actual teams that are actually having the disadvantage, fearing the disadvantage, or feel it coming, like a relegation, for example. Feel it coming. Oh no, okay, yeah. Then I'm not sure if that actually was right. Correct decision. Can we fight that on court? Yes, let's fight it on court. It's not even that question is not even asked. Of course, they just go to court. And so the circle continues and continues, and it's not a good look. One, and it's just like okay, it's a very Belgian thing. I would also still argue that in that maybe, but no, and also don't care necessarily about that. But that it just feels like I mean some independent, more independent at least. Solution should be possible for anything around the format, let's say, and then I mean, yeah, like, and then these court cases, well, we all know then, okay, they go on, and then in the end, they are the people that are feeling disadvantaged, the victims, they get their right, but the solution then basically is like, oh, yeah, okay, you stay in, but let's also put the other ones back in there as well, so let's just make the league bigger, or find a solution for next season, and then, yeah, and then the cycle repeats. That's yeah.
I think you've got this thing going on, don't you, where nobody really wants to take responsibility almost in a way. That's really what's going on. It's like they keep kicking the can down the road, as they say with this as well, and avoiding addressing the kind of big questions surrounding kind of structure and things like that, and always find little sticky plasters and tack-ons that, kick it down the road for another 18 months or whatever, and who knows what's going to happen in the next few weeks leading up to the end of the season, because as I was just saying, we think we're going to a classic 18-team format next season, without anything, with all the jeopardy removed. But we don't know yet. I mean, this leads us nicely into the second part of Phil's question about is the CPL viable in the new format? What's going to happen with the under-23 teams? Because just in the last few days, we've seen the amateur wing of Flemish football say no to the latest proposals, which, for those of you who don't know, meant that if an under-23 side was relegated, they had to be replaced by another one. And even if that under-23 side in the amateur league finished in 4th or 5th place, they would then be promoted in order to replace just a ludicrous system, which was so against the whole spirit of sporting integrity that, it's almost, it comes back to that thing I was just saying about, if people keep turning away from the big problem and going, we'll talk about this later, here's a short-term solution, then you're going to keep getting these issues. And clubs are in court so often now, Joris. They must get into court and go, what are we here to argue about this week? We've forgotten what it is we're moaning about this week because we're moaning about that last week. It's just becoming... Farskell doesn't even kind of begin to sort of cover it. I've got to the point where I have no idea what's going to happen with the under-23 teams. I can't even guess at what they might do now because, Ghent are obviously pushing hard to try and bring the whole system down again, because I'm sure lots of you know listening at home, the under-23 team vote was tied to the structure, the playoff structure, and all of that. So they weren't separate propositions, and that's the legal basis, I think, isn't it, Joris, for them revisiting this. So if they change the under-23 situation, which they looked like they had, then that meant surely you have to keep the format. It has to revert back to the original format, but the Pro League said no, and that's why it's going back to court. So, yeah, we're basically back to square one.
Yeah, that was why I was looking at Genk, but also, of course, I also want to specifically aim at Gent for once as well, because they were definitely also one of the sides that turned last season. There's so many teams to blame, but they were definitely also one of them, together with Genk and a few others. But yeah, this is a topic where I started at the first question, where I completely switched my opinion, and I feel like now at this stage, I've always been relatively in favor of the under 23 sides in the professional league and in the Challenger Pro League. But at this stage, it's just one too farcical. And I do get all the arguments as well that is just favoring the top sides a bit too much. So like I'm changing it to kicking them out. The issue with that, of course, is they bring the money as well. That's where a question comes from. I suppose a bit is of the viability question. Yeah, I mean, in theory, you could say that if they revert things, this is a hypothetical situation. It's never going to happen, by the way. But like, they could kick Young Genk out because of last season. They should have been relegated, and this season they could kick Club Next out because they should have been relegated, for example. But that's again 2 million, I believe it is, then for both sides. Not going into the league. Of course, it's not fully. There will be some replacement in that case, so that's not nothing that they will bring, I'm sure. But although they won't have to pay this 1 million. So no, actually, it is 2 million less in that league, which is already indeed. Well, it's already not viable. Is what I would already say. To be honest, to be fair, so like regardless of, but taking those away might lead into even more issues. But yeah, I feel like the system is a bit. I'm not sure how much this is on Belgian regulations, but I do feel like it is partially, at least, like the whole regulations of the whole system of the second league needing all the licensing requirements, for example, basically. Not for example, that's the point I'm going to go on. I think I've mentioned it before as well. There might be too tough, and like let it be a semi-professional division for partially, or like not a requirement that it's not that every player is a professional, or at least I believe there's a limit of how many professional players you at least need to have. Lift that. I think that would solve a lot of problems, a lot of costs, and whether it's easy to make it viable at this stage already, that we might already have turned a bit too far away from that. But I do think there might at some point a hard cut be needed, in the sense of like, these licenses, either the licenses becoming a bit easier to get, with less requirements. Of course, basic requirements need to be there. I'm not saying abolishing every requirement, but make it a bit lighter and less financially tough on sides that want to promote as well, because that's also already an issue in the lower leagues. I mean, I don't have the big solutions. I'm just indicating the big problems, I guess, a bit, and like speaking them out, but and giving a few options, maybe for solutions. But I'm sure there are downsides to everything, because like also like I'm like I said, it's very hypothetical. Maybe at this stage I wouldn't call it utopian anymore, anything about this, but at least something that trying to restore something that's already broken, and in the best possible way. But that's the question: is that even possible? It's I mean, I don't envy the people that actually have to decide those things for sure either, and obviously this money that the under 23 sides are paying is the main reason why they are they were able to convince other sides as well. But yeah, we know it's just the main solution is probably outside of this all is to somehow make it more attractive, get some more TV money, make it more accessible on TV. I mean, there's no big solution there, but like I do think that or maybe it is a solution, but it's not easy. It's easier said than done. But like, I don't know, play some games for free somewhere on national TV. I don't know, anything like to people accidentally watch it. That would be probably though the old school way to do it. I'm not sure if that even works now with linear TV already in decline. Also, there's a lot of other factors outside of it as well. But
you're right. You're
so many things.
You're right. There are so many things. It's a very complex picture. This isn't as simple as, I think, should the under-23 teams be in or out of the CPL. That's just one of a number of challenges that the 1B or the CPL, whatever you want to call it these days, kind of faces long term. And again, a bit like the bigger picture around whether we have playoffs and points having, nobody wants to really sit down and get to grips with this kind of properly.
Other pet peeve of mine, sorry, is very much next to the point, but yes, it's Challenger Pro League. I don't get why not everyone, but like 95% of people that ever talk about it still call it 1B, while it was laughed at so much when it actually was called that, because it didn't make sense, and it's not been named that for like 5 years, I guess, by now or so. I don't know if it's 5 exactly, but don't take me on the years. But like, and now everyone keeps calling that. Okay, I know Challenger Pro League. The Challenger Pro League on its own also maybe it's not the best kind of name, but still, I think it's a lot better than calling it like a B or something. Anyway,
it's not. It doesn't inspire confidence in a product to call something the B version. There's a marketing lesson in this somewhere, isn't there? There's a marketing agency tearing their hair out, at the thought of that. You mentioned them. We've been talking about the under-23 sides. We should say massive congratulations to Club Next. Obviously, they reached the UEFA Youth League final this week, which is no small achievement, really. The first ever Belgian side to do that. But we got this weird situation where Club Next reached the youth equivalent of the Champions League final for youth sides, but yet Club Next, who played their regular domestic football in the Challenger Pro League, have had a pretty miserable domestic season. Probably should have done a little bit better than they have done. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's difficult to judge that. Of course, it more or less is the same squads. Okay, outside of dispensation players, of course, or one of them at least. But of course, that means the actual squad, the youth league is for under 19, I believe. So until 19, or maybe I guess 19. And if you became 20 this season, I think you still, as long as you were 19 at the start of the campaign, you could still participate. And that, of course, in that league, it plays a bit of an advantage that they play professional. In many of their players play professionally in the Challenger Pro League already. Of course, that goes for some of the other sides as well. So that's not taking away anything, but it explains a little bit to some exponents some advantage they had, and it's good that they did so. But yeah, and of course with under 23s, when they're actually playing mid even younger squads, like that goes for all of the under 23 squads, because I believe ultimately on average the club's 23 squad is actually even the most senior squad, so to say. But I do feel like that's probably just I didn't really look as closer, but I do think like it's probably just a dispensation player being quite old, putting that average a lot higher, and so on. But anyway, that's an explanation, I guess, partially. Plus, of course, they will, since they knew the format, they will have focused maybe at some point, shifted their focus mainly on this European level, and then of course, understandably as well. Given the format that is in place, whether that is legal in the end or not.
Yeah, it's been so interesting to watch that. I watched the Youth League final the other night, and of course, it's a different level of football. So the pace is a bit different, and lots of aspects of the game tactically are a bit different. And in truth, I thought Club kind of struggled to kind of cope with Real Madrid's movement. Managed to get back into the game actually after Real went 1 up. Took it to penalties in the end, because of course there's no extra time at that level, and Club lost 4-2 in penalties in the end. But great achievement, kind of getting to that stage regardless, and it does say a lot about a lot of the good work that's obviously going on at what is, well, by UEFA standards, the best academy in Belgium at the moment. Some people would kind of beg to differ whether it is actually or not, but by UEFA metrics, it is, and they've certainly been making progress. Speaking of the Challenger Pro League, which we've been talking about, there are...
I do want to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah.
They also... I find this always difficult I will indeed not judge, because other sides do it as well, but these UEFA metrics are bollocks. Basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that, which is why I used a very polite phrase. Some people might beg to differ, but yeah.
There's some players that have been bought from outside, like some of the top talent in that squad are actually foreigners, which there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, it's youth football is actually evolving in that direction as well. Like, for example, Ajax is like the main example with like so many, not only Belgian but also Belgian actually, with players that they bring in from abroad. But like that's the discussion whether what is a youth player from your own or not is always it is something different and difficult, and I find it difficult to judge these things anyway. So like but yeah, it is a measurement, of course, but it doesn't necessarily mean your own youth on its own, of course. But yeah, okay, too much time spent on that, and like I said, doesn't take away anything from the performances they had. And other sides do it as well, but
other measurements are available. That's what we're saying, including our own. So as I was saying, we have got some playoff action actually ongoing right now. It's just about to finish. Funnily enough, we're in added on time. Lommel obviously are playing RFC Liège in the first leg in the playoffs tonight, and Patro Eisen are at home to Beerschot. Not quite finished these games, moments away, but at the moment Lommel are 3 up on RFC Liège, Joris, which probably puts that particular tie to bed. Patro are 1-0 up on Beerschot, so that one's very much still up for grabs. I actually thought, kind of coming into the playoffs, I really fancied Lommel and Beerschot to come through this. So Lommel look like they're well on their way. Beerschot still have some work to do if it's going to go the way I think it does. But Patro Eisen are, we should point out, people will know Patro Eisen are one of these sides who, when it gets to this stage of the season, do tend to surprise people a little bit. And obviously, Steinen is going up against one of his old sides there in Beerschot. And it looks like Patro are going to be heading into the second leg of that tie with a minor advantage going to Antwerp for the second leg.
Yeah, definitely does. But yeah, keep an eye on that. By next week, by our next episode, you will know already. But but it's very much possible that it's going to be Beerschot and Lommel. But not decided. Even, I mean, lately we've seen more and more comebacks at higher level as well, of course. But okay, it does look quite safe for Lommel at this stage. In Patro, we're celebrating, of course, the to a certain extent, embarrassingly hard that they celebrated that they got to the promotion playoffs for the third time in a row. I mean, it's good that they do so, but to really call it historic and so on, I mean, you should try to not get in those playoffs to actually, I guess, or get out of them in the good side. But they've been close before, so maybe they will manage this time. It is possible, of course.
Of course, whoever wins these playoffs is going to be playing the jump-off match against Dender. If you are Yannick Ferreira at this moment in time, Joris, which of those 4 sides would you fear the most?
You would say, based on name, Beerschot as well, of course, I guess. Mainly also because, I mean, if there would be a promotion playoff match, I'm sure the stadium will be quite full. At least for their home fixture, so that the fans playing their role. I do feel like that would be the most the case with Beerschot. But I mean, Lommel has had their good spells this season, and if they find one of those this at the end of the season, then they might just peak at the right time as well. It's possible. Liège, it doesn't look like, this. I suppose we could write them off already, but who knows? It's a bit early. We'll see next week. But in Patro, that's just like the unknown quantity, maybe, or like not the unknown, that not unknown, but more like the surprise package, maybe more like they could turn up, they could completely not show up in games. So I do think that's probably quite similar to Beerschot, to be honest, also on the field, but with the advantage for Beerschot being that there's a bigger fan base, I guess, that could make a difference. So I would count that as well in my calculation. So Beerschot is my answer, but any side could, of course, surprise.
And there we go. There we have it. There we have another week in Belgian football. Thank you very much for joining me, Joris. It's been an absolute delight. And yeah, there'll be plenty to pick up on next week because, as Joris was alluding to there, the second leg of these Challenger Pro League playoffs will have been completed before then. So we'll be able to have a good deep dive on, what awaits Dender in that jump-off match. If you like what we do here at the BFP, please do consider, as always, leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. And if you really, really like what we're doing, and we know that some of you do, you can consider buying us a coffee or buy me a coffee account, which goes a small way to meeting some of our production costs here at the BFP. But whatever you're up to over the next few days, take care of yourselves, everybody, and we will speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.